81, and you could even post a comment on there as well. Our analysts this morning, Joseph and AB, good morning. Welcome.
Good
Hello, good morning.
morning, Zibby, and good morning, Lagos. Everybody, I
Great
hope you're
to
all
be
fine.
here.
Awesome, awesome. All fine and doing well. So our first story comes from a Daily Trust. Now, organized labor has cautioned the federal government against petrol subsidy removal. They vowed that the move is they're basically vowing to resist it if this move is proceeded with. Now, the president and secretary general of the Trade Union Congress gave this warnings or cautions, as we can also call them, in conversation with the Daily Trust, which is the newspaper that this comes from. And yeah.
It is very important to put this story in context. We've been here too many times before. As a matter of fact, there was a significant effort to address this bane of fuel, so-called subsidy for Nigeria some years ago, and it resulted in a gathering at or near a rubbish dump in Lagos that was pretty significant, and it was reversed at the time. But that time, the president had the courage to confront the numbers and try to do something about it. On the strength of that protest, other people got a lot of attention and stated it was a scam. People were quoted as saying it was a scam. They assumed office, and even based on that momentum, raised the then price of fuel, which has kept going up, and we keep seeming to pay subsidy. Then we passed a law, because you could say the first one was just a president acting within his executive authority and not consulting everybody. So a law was passed removing subsidy. But in what to me seemed like one of the ultimate acts of cowardice, the administration saw the law and refused to carry out what the law said, stating, according to this story, that they were considering the elections and all that. That is just cowardice. You see a problem, I don't know about anybody else, but if you're in your house and there is a leak in your house, typically we don't say, you know what, the water is leaking, but I'll go to office and come back. You'll sort the problem immediately, especially when it's the law. Now we have a situation where Labour is saying they won't do it. You know why? There is a huge trust deficit. The Minister of Clement Agba has had over a year by now to come up with ways to mitigate the challenge of this removal of subsidy, so stated. And while he's receiving his salary every month and all his allowances, and his family must be living in the lap of luxury, he stated that they still have not come up with ways to mitigate the problem for Nigeria. It would suggest to me that they just don't care. And it is ultimately what I define as administrative lapse and carelessness. And that same administrative carelessness, I must say, is going on when it comes to the flooding. The rains have started. On the 24th of October, President Muhammadu Obari said he gave 90 days for a comprehensive report on how to handle the flood. January 24th was 90 days. I have not heard a peep. So we're talking about widespread administrative chaos within this administration, and therefore, I don't expect anything to be put in place officially and smoothly for this very needed subsidy to be removed. Let me say why I say it should be removed. Right now, Labour talks about multidimensional poverty, and they're right, 133 million plus. But how much are we actually losing within this so-called subsidy payment that could have been used for other things? I'll tell you this just for contrast. The Burj Khalifa, that tallest building in the world in Dubai, cost $1.5 billion. There was a one-time payment, once out of many, of $1.5 billion paid on this subsidy. Do you realize how many Burj Khalifas we could have planted all over Nigeria if we just redirected that money to something more productive? Right now, it goes into whose pockets we don't know. It's at the cost of our healthcare, our education, our security, and everything else. Listen, Labour, I know you're here to protect the people. I'm not against Labour, but let Labour look at the long-term thing and insist, rather than going on strike, on having Clement Agba and everybody connected to him give us the plan to help Nigerians deal with the subsidy. Give us public transportation. Give us better internet connectivity so that people may now work remotely and so on. It's not enough to just go on strike. That strike road has been traveled too many times and seems to have got us nowhere.
All right, Clement Agba is the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning. We've got some messages coming through. Ezekiel says, I think pushing against removal of subsidy is not a smart move. What they need to do is to ensure the amount used on subsidy presently is used for capital projects and programs that will benefit the general populace rather than enrich a few. Shegun says, if we now have a government that has the guts to remove the subsidy, why should Labour kick against it? What advice did the Labour movement give the Labour Party's presidential candidate when he said he would remove the subsidy? Now, all three candidates from the leading parties did state that they would remove the petrol subsidies if they were elected. Let's go on to the Punch. Now, the National Working Committee of the PDP, led by the acting national chairman, has reversed the suspension of the party's chieftains, including the former governor of Ekiti State, Ayodele Fayose. And the publicity secretary disclosed this just yesterday in Abuja.
Yeah, before I make comment about this PDP and their back and forth, I just want to put in context the reaction of Labour on the subsidy issue. What they are asking for is that they should be taken along in the steps that are going to be taken, and reassured that measures will be taken. So I just wanted that context to be understood. Labour is not against removal of subsidy, but they want that the federal government consider them as an important stakeholder in the decisions they are making. Okay, so PDP is like medicine after death. PDP watched Dr. Ayochia Ayu stall the progress of their party and that marred their chances in the presidential and the general elections in 2023. And they were unable to deal with one man until the horse bolted out of the pen. So it's a very sad situation. They lost the election. They have, lost states where they even had and all that. And now they want to do remedial. But even the remedial approach leaves a whole lot of questions. You have a bunch of members who seem out of control and nothing can happen to them. They can play anti-party. They can talk to the leadership anyhow. They can do anything and get away with it. So I see a house that has no discipline. Well, if this will arrest the situation and pull back people, I think what all they are doing is just remedial. On one hand, you're calling back people. In one hand, you're punishing people. The ESCO in the World Council, world level that suspended IU has been placed on suspension. It's disbanded. So are you disciplining people or you're not disciplining people? If you're considering everything, then you want a house that's united. Then everybody to drop every punishment, get people to work together, and then you can solve the problem. But it's too late, I think, for the ADP because they lost quite a lot with the way they mismanaged their chances before and during this election. So you don't have governors of your party working against you brazenly, and you cannot discipline them. So now they are relying on constitution. That same constitution was in existence before now. So we want to see what will come out of this. I hope that eventually they can get their acts together and put their house in order.
Do you think the PDP is done, or can they, get a rebound back from this?
You can't dismiss the party like the PDP and say it's done. And of course, these measures they are taking to suit frayed nerves may help in consolidating on whatever is left of the party. and ensuring that it doesn't just go to smithereens, you know. So the chances are there that they can set themselves up again, but it will take a while before this impact to come. 2027 is what they may be looking at, unless the court gives them victory in this election when they go to court, as Atiku is claiming that he won it. Unless that happens, they have to wait till 2027 to make any assertion. So getting the House together is very important. A few elections are coming, off-season elections will be coming up. We'll see how this plays out for them positively.
All right, so let's go on to this story from The Guardian. Now, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Adeleke Mamora, raised concerns over Nigeria's energy efficiency ratio. Now, according to him, though, it's below international acceptable minimum energy performance standards. And he's explained further that through the national energy policy, Nigeria is joining the rest of the world in recognizing efficiency as one of the perhaps most cost-effective means of providing energy security.
Honestly, it's good to hear that, first of all, on paper, we are attempting to adhere to some of these international standards for energy and other things. And I'll tell you why. Many of us grew up with incandescent bulbs. And now, increasingly around, you find people using the power or energy savers. The difference in power consumption can be felt at your prepaid meter. So in a country like ours that is thus far energy poor, you find people increasingly concerned with how they can manage their resources, whether it's to pay for electricity bills and all that. Because many of us have had to provide our own electricity through our generators, in many cases, we have not measured just how much we use. But now when we're moving towards metering, people are now much more concerned. And you find many of the appliances we use, whether the fridges or indeed, especially what he talked about, the air conditioners, you are looking for higher efficiency products. They may cost a bit more initially, but over the lifespan of the equipment, you will find you are paying less. Why this is important, especially in Nigeria, as it is that here in our climate, our main problem is cooling. In the West, you know, you have people, they need to do heating, they need to do cooling. Here, it's just about cooling. So we're talking about getting better products, higher efficiency products, thereby ending up spending less and also contributing fewer or less greenhouse gases towards global warming. This is part of us being part of an overall world view. We need to be part of the world. We need to adhere to this. And one of the best ways to improve the equipment we must buy is to ensure that the designs of the buildings we're using or inhabiting are already energy efficient themselves. Because it's when you have better, cooler buildings ab initio that the load that you are cooling is reduced. We have two things. One, the buildings to be designed. Two, the equipment we use to cool it. But I'm happy to hear that as a nation, we're choosing to say, look, we're going to benchmark our standards along world standards and try and ensure that we have higher energy efficiencies at all levels. It can only do us good, and it'll help us manage our scarce energy resources that much better.
All right, let's go on to WhatsApp and look at a few messages coming through. Ibukun says, subsidy removal without local refining of crude is a recipe for disaster, as will be tied to the international price of crude in USD. If the Burj Khalifa was built in Nigeria, it would cost 10 times the price. And Jai says, this fuel subsidy albatross on the neck of the Nigerian masses can be removed once and for all if the government is sincere and ready to refine our fuel in Nigeria instead of refining it abroad and importing it back into the country for our consumption. Another message from Idima Puza, fuel subsidy removal is okay, but the timing and availability of reducing effects of it is the problem. Refineries should be working, transportation and electricity should be easily accessed before the removal. And JP says, trying to pull up JP's message, brilliant points on energy efficiency. We must be clear as we chase the Paris Agreement that we transition justly. All right, let's take a break and we'll continue the conversation on the other side. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Stay with us.
Maybe you know the
Back
dilemma.
on in a minute.
Okay. Maybe the dilemma of the government is a matter of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know,
Understood.
they don't have the but they don't have the money. They don't have. I know that if they remove the subsidy, it will to solve a lot of problems. But how do you make the ordinary Nigerian who is going to feel the pain understand that he needs to feel this pain in order to get to that promised land? That's the problem.
And that is where the trust deficit comes in. It is impossible for you to come. Listen, I'm a subsidy removal hawk. I think it should be removed. But you will not convince me to accept it if you are going around in private jets, falling over the
That's the point. That is the point.
Convoy. So until the governing class shows us that they too will deal with it, me, Bozimo,
you don't want to make sacrifice, but you want me to make sacrifice.
Exactly. That is the problem. And they don't want to make sacrifice. That's why I called President Buhari a coward. Yeah, I saw you wince. Zibby, you winced. He is a coward. I didn't stutter. Wait.
A friend of mine who was close to Jonathan.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. We have our analysts joining us this morning, AB Bozimo and Joseph Obari. As always, we love to get your thoughts, so let us know what they are. 0809 4440981. That is the WhatsApp number. You can also tweet at Smooth981 and catch the live stream up on our YouTube channel as well. It's Smooth981. We'll come to your messages shortly, but let's start off this segment with the headline from Punch. Now, the Nigeria Union of Pensioners are calling for the creation of a new ministry to address the plight of pensioners. Now, the union is stating that governors of the Southwest states were being owed their gratuities and pensions rolling into trillions of naira. And they're also urging the government to implement the consequential adjustments and 35% increments in the pensions.
Zibby, the problem is not creating another bureaucracy, layers of bureaucracy, create another ministry that will now be just another, red tape, whatever, just that's not the solution to the problem. It's just that you have insensitive leaders who do not care about people. There's been a lot of changes in the pension management with the creation of the pension commission and all that. We know how bad it used to be in those days, but at least now there is, for those who have come through the new pension scheme, a lot has been achieved, and people today retire and they are able. These are people who are being managed outside of that. So what I think the government should think about is how they can bring these people in under some other arrangement until the experts can work this out and put these people into the scheme in some form of way. Government is not doing what they should do, but most of the time, in fact, the federal government, most of the time, it depends on the savings from the pension to finance. They borrow from there most of the time because a whole lot of money is there. That's for those who are in the pool. But those who are outside of the pool, there should be a clear thought on how to bring them into the pool. Because even when you retire, there are arrangements you can make whereby you can still continue to contribute money on your own at a personal level into a scheme. So there are the creation of a ministry is not a solution, and it will help them. It's of course you're going to have to pay salary to the people. You have to rebuild houses. You have to punish those offices, and so that money would have paid some part of the whatever trillion that will be owed. So their suggestion is not a solution at all. It's not, and I don't think that the government at different levels, state and federal government, they are really giving thought to what to do with those people who are currently outside of the pension scheme pool. That's what the solution should be. How can we incorporate them? So government pays the money into pension managers who can now invest that money, and they yield from it. They can use it to solve it. But there has to be a way out. There has to be a way out. But creating another bureaucracy is just a waste of time, and it will solve their problem. And they know what has happened to those who have been managing this, their funds for them for now. That's the same bureaucracy. So that's the problem.
All right, let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 444 0981. Sunday says, it appears that many are now coming to terms that it was the indiscipline of the major opposition party that cost them the last elections and not rigging. It was the indiscipline that made them jettison their zoning agreements, which led to Peter Obi leaving the party. It was the same indiscipline that led to the G5 and the sit-tight of Yochayu. Those protesting today should come to their reasoning and do some introspection rather than making some unrealistic noise. Anthony Francis says the structure that cost 1.5 billion would cost 15 billion here, because we know how our politicians behave. The subsidy removal, if adopted, may backfire on Nigerians unless we take a different approach with these politicians on its implementation this time around. Let's move on to this day. Now, the federal government has blamed the ongoing deforestation across the country on state governments and other, what they're calling, powerful interest groups who protect loggers who are producing charcoal for sale. And this is according to the Minister of Environment, Mohammed Abdullahi.
You know, it's really hard to hear this story and grasp that deforestation, which is literally a huge environmental phenomenon, is being driven primarily by charcoal producers. That's just a little bit difficult to assimilate for two reasons. One, how much charcoal possibly is being created? How is it adding to the economy of the particular states? And lastly, the key word there is interests. If you can redirect the interests and produce the results for the people, would they by themselves not move away from that? Wood is a very, very vital element in furnishing, in construction, in so many other things. So if you're able to, and I mean, we always talk about Italian made this, but a lot of the time they get wood from other parts of the world, take it there, process it, and import it as finished products. Can you imagine if we turned the economy concerning wood into a more productive economy concerned with finished goods rather than just charcoal? And if we provided alternative fuels, because charcoal, I think, is used for, you know, cooking and all that. If we provided the alternative fuels as part of a big picture, then you might find that wood would, first of all, be managed properly as the asset it is, because even in a place like the United States, they use wood for construction, for their buildings. So not as if wood doesn't have purposes, but it is carefully planted, the forests are carefully maintained and all that, and then the yield is much better. I think for us to be facing deforestation for mere, and I don't say this lightly, for mere charcoal is not really giving us good bang for the buck in terms of return on that God-given resource. Again, it goes down to administrative snafu. The federal government is pointing fingers at the state government. The state government says interests are involved. Indeed, the state government does have power over the land, but we must be able to align these interests in the ultimate higher good of the people. And that just seems to be the lacking factor. Wood is good and it can be better managed, but we cannot continue just pointing fingers. Pointing fingers, I think, is the laziest way to go about it. Nobody cares. When you point fingers, what next? Tell me a solution. Don't restate the problem. You add no value to the society by restating the problem.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Joseph, do you want to add?
Yeah, because my first reaction reading this story is exactly what he said. Why are we just blame gaming? I mean, what is it? Your states are causing this or that, and you're the federal government, you're a minister. I mean, so what is it? We've had enough of analysis of problems in Nigeria by our leaders. They should find solutions. That's what matters. solutions.
From Punch, former students of polytechnics across the country are calling on the president to sign the Higher National Diploma and Bachelor of Science Dichotomy Act before him to ensure the sustainability and growth of technological education. Now, under the aegis of the Forum of the Nigeria Polytechnics Alumni Association, they say that giving assent to the act would calm frayed nerves and renew hopes for millions of graduates from polytechnics here in Nigeria.
You know, it's shocking that government needs to be persuaded to do this, or the president needs to be persuaded to do this. This dichotomy hasn't worked and has not helped anybody, has not helped the country as a whole. You know, and the problem started with when they were conceiving this. Some individuals who were in the position, felt that they should create this dichotomy deliberately because they wanted the other people to feel less important than them. And so national growth was sacrificed at the whims of some people's ego. And now, over the years, we've seen that that disparity was unnecessary. And of course, steps have been taken to correct it. But just give it the fast force of law. That legal framework, the backbone for it to be able to be implemented across board and it may crave for some bit of changes in the system. And it is hanging. And there is enough reason for them to feel concerned, because if the president leaves office without signing this, they will have to start the battle afresh with the new administration. So it is justified for them to fight for this to be done. And we feel that it is important that the government listens to them, and particularly the president signs the act, the bill into act, into law.
Dami from Ikorodu says, how can the minister claim that these interests are more powerful than it's inside our own country? And that he also says there's a difference between hands and degrees. They are meant to serve different segments of the employment market. JP says, your analysis is spot on, sir. The government just needs to get it right. Incentives must be the way to go. And a message from Nee says, well, the truth is, from experience, there are market differences between a polytechnic graduate and a university graduate. It's sad to say, but that's my experience over the past 15 years. We're out of time. That's all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for listening. And thanks for your messages as well. Special thanks to our analysts, Joseph Obari and AB Bozimo, for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zibby, and
it's a pleasure.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice weekend, everybody. Peace.
A brilliant weekend ahead. Do stay with us. There is a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast right here on Smooth 98.1.